This is a Blood Moon Features production. Hey everyone, my name is Poker Rhino, and this is Talk Nitty To Me. All right, calm down, you bunch of trousers, calm down. See, this isn't going to be another one of those poker podcasts where we spend hours arguing about whether Ace King is a drawing hand. I mean, we'll get there to topics like that, but eventually. No, this is a show about poker, life, the rebuys of life, and everything in between. There'll be laughs, there'll be stories, there'll be bad beats. Oh, will there be bad beats? And sometimes there'll be conversation that gets a little uncomfortable. But those are usually the ones worth having, right? Before I ask you to follow me on this journey, I think you deserve to know who I am and how poker became a part of my story. See, poker has always been a part of my life. I honestly can't remember even learning how to play. I presume it was from my grandmother, as she was the big gambler in the family, but some of my earliest memories are just the family get-togethers. Birthdays, holidays, random weekends. Eventually someone would clear the table, someone would shuffle a deck, tournament chips would come out, and sure enough, there was my little brother and I trying to hang with the adults. Looking back, those weren't just poker games. Those are family memories. Those are laughs. Those are lessons. And if one person shaped my love for gambling, it was definitely my grandma. Now, see, she adored slot machines. But ironically enough, one of my favorite stories with her has nothing to do with the casino. It was literally sitting in her living room watching Jeopardy! Every question we played was worth a nickel. And at the end of the day, it didn't matter who won because we were playing for fun. She taught me something that stayed with me my whole life, something that at my worst I began to forget, and now I endear it even more in my heart. Respect the gamble, and never gamble what you can't afford. Play because you love the game, not because you think the game owes you anything. Now, I've never really hidden the fact that I made some really dumb financial decisions when I was younger, and, well, my credit was a bit of a mess. And God bless her, my grandma wanted to help me rebuild it. So eventually it got to the point where if I needed to use a credit card for something, I'd give her the cash, and then she'd let me use her card. Eventually, she trusted me enough that she got a card specifically for me. Now, the card was still in her name, but the plan was simple. I'd rebuild my credit, pay off all my debts, and then eventually she'd make me an authorized user, then remove herself once I was on my feet. Life had other plans, though. She passed away October 6th, 2013, before any of that could happen. After she passed, my family, especially my uncle, who was the executor of the will, started looking at bills and looking at this and that. And, there were questions and misunderstandings about that account. And it became one of those painful moments that affected my family relationship for years because rather than just coming up to me and asking me, they presumed that I was stealing from her. And I think that part really hurt because I've never given them a reason to think that prior to. And not only that, I would later find out that my uncle, the one who was accusing me of stealing, was actually the same one who had taken out a $5,000 loan from my grandma and was slowly paying her off. So I guess in a way he threw me under the bus to make his look not so bad, but that's neither here nor there. And whether people knew the whole story or not, it still hurt. And for a long time, I carried that hurt with me. Then came the relationships that slowly chipped away at who I was. One of them was emotionally abusive. The other became physically and financially abusive. And it's so interesting because as a man, I sat there and I took the physical abuse because I just assumed this was part of the relationships. This happens to everybody. Surely uh, everybody gets punched in the jaw or slapped in the face or gets a lamp chunked at their head. And, I felt like if I complained about it, then I was just being weak and, I couldn't come up with my own solutions. Obviously well, even now it's kind of hard to talk about it in hindsight, but, at least I can see now that I needed to leave that relationship sooner than I did, but that relationship becomes a part of you and you feel like you can't get any better, that what you're at is the peak. And again, like I was saying, in hindsight, it's easy for me to say, I should have left earlier, but I just, if you've never been in that kind of relationship, it's hard to explain. People are always asking, why didn't you just leave? And I guess what it boils down to is abuse doesn't begin with the worst day. It happens little by little until one day you just don't recognize yourself anymore. And that's when poker came back into my life. I was taking an Uber home after having a few adult beverages after work, and my driver told me about this place in South Austin called Bullett's Card Club. Interestingly, he was just trying to earn a free month's membership, but he had no idea that he was about to change my life. After getting established and getting comfortable playing tournaments at Bullets, I eventually went to TCH and eventually went to the lodge. And after a while, I started noticing that I'd get there at 9 in the morning, and sometimes I wouldn't leave until 3 the next morning. And honestly, people just thought I loved poker and loved the lodge and loved TCH, but the truth was I was hiding. I'd rather spend 18 hours in a card room than go back to that house where I didn't know if I was going to get the shit kicked out of me or if I was going to get verbally abused or what have you. It was just easier to be at the card house, which is kind of what led me to this next part of my life. And I'll be completely frank with you. This isn't really easy to say, but if this podcast is going to be honest, then it actually has to be honest. See, eventually, I became that guy. You can't see it because I'm doing this podcast, but I'm doing air quotes over that guy because I became that guy who borrowed money, that guy who said I was good for it, that guy that said that I'd pay them back within the next hour, or at the very most, like later that night. Because either my girlfriend was going to put money in my card, or my card wasn't working. Um, Either way, the people trusted me because they knew in my heart that I was a good guy, and they'd believe I'd pay them back. Honestly, that was the plan. My plan every single time was simple. Just win the tournament, pay everyone back, boom, problem solved. Except poker doesn't work like that. Sometimes I lost. Sometimes I was embarrassed. And sometimes I'd leave without saying anything because I didn't know what else to do. And I hate admitting that, but pretending it didn't happen doesn't help anyone. We can't build the future we want if we refuse to respect the past, the good and the bad. Eventually, everything caught up with me. I finally left my ex girlfriend. But the problem was my credit was so shattered because of everything that had happened that I found myself without a home and wound up on the streets. And it's so interesting because I remember seeing the panhandlers in Austin when I was younger who were wearing their Nike Air Force One shoes, and they're wearing polo shirts, and they're wearing like Abercrombie and Fitch shorts, and I'd immediately just be like, no, no, they're not homeless. They just don't want to work. Yet here I am on the streets with my Toomey suitcase, my Coach backpack, my Coach shoes. I had Tommy Bahama on as a shirt, and I had Wrangler as the jeans. And I wore that because I didn't want them to get damaged in the suitcase. But here I am begging everybody for help while I'm wearing that. And I can just hear younger me being like, that dude just doesn't want to get a job. I started calling shelters and I learned something that really shocked me. Finding a bed as a single man was damn near impossible. I remember calling 211 and telling them that I had called every single place in the area. And their response to me was, there's literally nowhere for you to go. And I remember telling him, sir, so what do I do? Are you telling me that I have to sleep under this bridge that's behind me? And I'll never forget his response. I'm really sorry, and I hope you find your way. And that was the crazy part because don't get me wrong, I'm all for them helping women and children. But the fact that every shelter catered to women and children and not one single one would be willing to help me as a man, I couldn't comprehend it. Like, these people who are supposed to help you are sitting there telling me good luck on the streets. And I spent all that time searching for help and not finding it. That was about a year ago. And if you'd asked me then where I'd be today, I honestly don't know what I would have said. I don't know. But something finally changed and shifted my momentum. One of my best friends, his mom, uh, realized the situation I was in and got me a hotel room for 2 weeks just so I could have a place to shower and rest while I got ready for my job interview. My grandfather slowly but surely started helping me out. And the big thing was I started seeing a counselor. I remember just not knowing what was going to happen next, getting so stressed out that my black beard turned white. Not gray, not silver, white. And I finally just turned to my mom, who was dealing with demons of her own, and I said, "Mom, I don't know what to do. I genuinely don't know what to do." The only thing she could think of was to introduce me to the woman that's now my counselor. And after about a 45-minute session, I realized I didn't have all the answers. And I was finally able to admit that I didn't have all the answers. But something happened in that session that hadn't happened in a long time. Because before I fully believed in myself, I started to hear that my counselor believed in me. And, she's the one that suggested I go to the crisis center, which is basically a men's shelter for domestic violence victims. And as I applied there again, you could tell that the lady was just trying to say no because I was a man. And I'm not saying that to sound condescending or douchey towards them. I'm being completely serious. Like, she straight up said, "I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do for you." A year later, and there's still nothing they could do for me. But thankfully, I had enough faith and trust in my counselor that I was able to turn to her immediately and tell her what they said. And I'll put it to you this way. My counselor refused to let that be the end of my story. So she advocated for me. She fought for me. And I don't know what she said, but by the end of that afternoon, the crisis center had put me up in a hotel and introduced me to my now case manager, who's helped me get on my feet and get where I need to go. It's funny because, again, being a man and it's toxic male perception. But I've always been a firm believer that asking for help is weakness. But now I realize sometimes we all need somebody who sees something in us that we've forgotten how to see in ourselves. And that decision to get that counselor changed my life. Today, pretty much everybody I owe money to has been paid back. Pretty much every single one. There's still a couple of them that I still owe, but I've at least gotten in touch with them conversationally, explained my situation, and they have been beyond understanding. And it's so interesting because when I walked back into that poker room after all that time, I was terrified. I expected judgment. Instead, I found something I didn't expect: grace. Because you see, when you're honest and you own your mistakes, and yeah, when you show up with their money, people can be forgiving. Not everybody, but enough people. Enough to remind me that rebuilding a reputation happens one conversation at a time. So, okay, you've gotten to know me and you've kind of gotten to know a little bit of my backstory, but, I do promise you that not every conversation is going to be this uh, emotional. We're going to have fun. Like, we're gonna talk about other things, and please reach out to me on my Instagram at PokerRhino, at PokerRyno, and send me a message and tell me what you want to talk about. Tell me what topics you want to hear discussed. Because when I initially built this podcast concept, it was to give people something to listen to while they're playing in a tournament. Give them something to listen to while they are folding so that they can keep it going and they're not necessarily bored and play hands just out of sheer boredom. Um, Tell me, what do you want to talk about? Tell me who you want to hear, because, you know, that's other things that I want to get to. Like, I want to talk about my pretty ambitious poker goals. I've got the goal to want to have a 5-figure score. I want to win a Run Good ring, a WSOP circuit ring, a Poker Atlas trophy ring. I'd like to get a Hendon Mob 6-figure number. Love to win a TCH Champions uh, Palace Poker, I'd love to win trophies from all those places. I'd love to win, uh, like I know Mississippi, Arizona, Oklahoma, I know they do state championships in poker, so I'd love to win those in any other state that does them. I'd love to compete around the country and hell, maybe even the world. But here's the funny thing, those aren't actually my biggest goal anymore. The biggest goal is just becoming someone that people are proud to root for. That they support me if I get a really good run good at a WSOP bracelet event. Honestly, guys, if you've made it this far, maybe you're a poker player. Maybe you're rebuilding your own life. Maybe you're just trying to get through today. But whatever brought you here, thank you. And I'm glad you're here. This podcast is going to be about a ton of things: poker, food, bad beats, strategies, mental health, success, failure. And we're for sure going to have guests on here. So please message me who you want to have on here and we'll talk to them. And hopefully we'll have a few laughs along the way. Because if there's one thing poker's taught me, it's that one bad session doesn't define your career. And one bad chapter doesn't define your life. You always have another hand to play. I am Poker Rhino, and this is Talk Nitty To Me. Run well, live better, be the nuts.